My sketchbook looks ugly and will never be completed. I'm drawing all the time. Why am I not improving? When will I finally be good enough to be a real artist? These were my actual thoughts popping up along my art journey, and last year I finally got rid of self-doubt and a bunch of other bad habits when it comes to creating art. I'm Sally, this channel is all about figurative art, and today I want to share with you my top 5 art lessons I had to learn the hard way. And hopefully they can help you creating a better mindset as an artist. While I talk, you will see me drawing with some new materials I never tried before, so enjoy the process, and we're starting strong with my number 1 lesson. Your sketchbook doesn't matter. Or at least, it doesn't matter as much as you think it does. In the art community, there is some kind of unspoken god, a higher being, the holy grail of creativity, sketchbooks. There's a whole niche around this religion of feeding sketchbooks called sketchbook tours. And I love them, don't get me wrong, we have amazing artists showing us their most precious, intimate collection of artworks. Yes, artworks. Unlike the name of the object being sketchbook, a lot of artists use them to showcase their really polished, top-notch artworks. And beside from it, of course, being beautiful and inspirational, it also puts a lot of pressure on the art community to also fill a whole sketchbook with perfect drawings and all kinds of media. This trend, in my opinion, created an endless cycle of competition among artists for everyone trying to showcase their beautiful, completely filled sketchbooks, and it's time to stop. Stop putting that pressure on yourself of keeping your sketchbook so neurotically clean or planned or fleshed out, because it will in fact cause you art blocks and waves of frustration. I know this because I've been there. I too wanted to have a pretty portfolio-like sketchbook, but once I reached the point where one single page didn't meet my quality standards, I would start hating to even look at the book. I just stopped using it because I couldn't stand the fact I, quote, messed up. My precious sketchbook, which was supposed to be my ideal portfolio, my $1 million book, which should be so good I wouldn't even sell it for all the money in the world, and I ruined it because I wasn't good enough. I failed. This is just a glimpse of the vortex you might walk into very willingly. You see, I think being creative and serious with art is like any other relationship in real life. You have to nourish it, you have to gain experience over time, you have to be mindful with it, or else it might have a toxic impact on you. It can give you self-doubt and insecurities, but on the other hand, if you embrace flaws, imperfection, and practice to be patient, it can give you strength and a real purpose in life. But sketchbooks? Sketchbooks bring along huge expectations and very vague, broad promises of this portfolio-like aesthetic. Not even talking about the phenomenon of being obsessed with buying fancy sketchbooks to just not use them because you think they're too good for you and your skill isn't good enough to be allowed to take a step inside. And hey, I know you're guilty of this too, don't deny it. It is very tempting to get the latest, coolest, thickest sketchbook out there just so you know it's sitting at home doing absolutely nothing. Enough. Time to move on. So in 2024, I still wanted to maintain my sketchbook for the first few months, but I quickly let go of the idea of it ending up as a clean portfolio. As you can see, I do have some more polished pages, but those are being followed by absolute raw thumbnail sketches or construction scribbles, and that's okay. I definitely made my peace with it after I noticed, what do these random portraits sitting on top of these bound pages actually do? They look super random, and while some are really polished, they are in a sense pretty useless to me because they are somewhat in between a finished artwork, but then again not really, because they are just randomly placed in this book. Instead, I like to use good quality paper sheets or even a ring book to actually finish a really nice illustration with an actual composition on this paper. I can then hang up in my room and also sell the originals. Speaking for myself, I found much more meaning in not filling up a book with random art, but to have a finished, separate piece, and also I have no pressure of messing it up because I can just start over and throw away the failed attempt without some previous pages being brought down by a lower level of skill. This doesn't mean you shouldn't own a sketchbook. I know there are tons of artists out there who love keeping a messy, loose sketchbook, and I also love taking a peek in other people's sketchbook. I just want to point out that for some, there may be a lot of pressure involved and it's time to let it go. Before we move on to the next lesson I just want to mention that I had an absolute blast with both the pastel pencils and the paper I tried out. The paper is amazing. I was really blown away by the thickness and also the soft tooth on the surface. I was a bit worried because I sketched right onto the paper and did use my eraser quite a lot, so I thought once I start coloring you might see some marks where I destroyed the tooth of the paper, but no, everything stayed smooth and soft and was able to take a lot of pigment. Going back to my second art lesson I learned last year. Draw and study intentionally. Quantity is not enough. Ever heard the phrase work smarter, not harder? Well, unfortunately, I think we need to do both, smart and hard. But those two words don't include all the time. I see a lot of advice out there claiming in order to improve, you need to draw every day. Well, I don't think it will get you far. Well, yes, muscle memory is a thing and training your skills frequently is to some degree essential. If you force yourself to draw or paint every day, you will probably end up with mediocre sketches and studies, since I doubt most of you have hours of free time every day to spend for art, and even if you do, the fact that your number one goal would be to quote, just draw every day, you will lose sight of what you need to actually improve, and that is intentional, conscious studying. Doesn't even need to be studying specifically, but turning your brain off and just drawing for the sake of doing it every day won't get you the results. Instead, try to actively sit down, starting when you look for references. Think about why you choose a certain reference and maybe go for a reference out of your comfort zone. Either way, use your brain actively to process what you're doing and why. Speaking about studies, I recommend separating your studies by category. That way, you will really pay attention to that specific field and improve faster. For example, one day you decide to study a portrait with focusing on the construction phase, trying out different methods like the Loomis or Riley method, and during the process you actively question what you do and walk away from that study with new knowledge you will keep in your head because you purposely paid attention to a very specific approach. This study is then worth more than 10 quick drawings in your sketchbook because you gain so much more experience. And what I noticed for myself is that bigger, finished, and more polished drawings have more value than small, quick sketches. It might be different for others, but in my opinion, the best way to improve is to actually try and give it your best from start to finish every time. If you try out new products and art supplies like I do right now with these pastel pencils, I do prefer to create a whole artwork. One, because I can then really find out if the materials work with my usual habits and techniques, but also because during the process you will explore things you like and dislike, and that is very useful for future pieces. Something you might not discover when just watching or doodling for a short amount of time. This drawing here took me quite a while, I'd say around 7 to 8 hours to finish, but in the end it is always worth it for me to sit through it because it gives me much more value than just doing something every day for the sake of it, because it was done intentionally. The next art lesson I want to talk about is getting trapped in realism. Yes, this is a thing, and I'm sure some of you can relate to this, but to everyone who's unfamiliar with the term, let me explain. So, you're an aspiring artist, and you realized you won't get too far without doing studies. And we do studies from real things. References of real people, animals, landscape, clear photos of real subjects. You then notice with each study you do, hey, wait a minute, this is actually working. I can see my improvement and I'm able to capture the references more and more. You become impressed with your own skill and ability to recreate what you see in a reference. And not only that, there are a few relatives, friends, or followers who literally admire your drawings, like, oh my god, this looks great. It looks like it's real. You are so talented. And with that encouragement, you feel just awesome. Finally, you get some praise and acknowledgement and you absorb it like a sponge. Naturally, you will keep doing what you did. And with study after study, you notice improvement, which is exactly what we want, right? And before you know it, you're trapped in drawing as realistic as possible because people tell you you're talented because your drawings look real. See, people who don't do art themselves or beginner artists often think the impressive aspect of art is creating something as real looking as possible. Is it though? The only impressive thing about copying a reference, in my opinion, is the technical skill, but it heavily lacks creativity. It's boring, it has no meaning, and along the way you forgot what the studies you did were meant for. They aren't supposed to be the end result. I did a lot of studies last year and I will continue to do so, but it was very easy to stay in the habit of just keep practicing with references and not put any further thought into it besides analyzing facial structures. But that's not what makes good, inspiring artwork. You're ignoring the essence of art, creativity. Me personally, I intentionally studied a lot of faces, shadow and value behavior, and I wanted to give myself a boot camp to really learn the fundamentals. But along the way, I realized that my studies bored me. I didn't enjoy looking at them, they just seemed soulless to me, and I told myself for the future, I need to find a healthy balance of creating raw studies and implementing more creative elements, which brings me to my next art lesson. Feed your inner child. Those of you who are a little bit familiar with psychology might know the term inner child. Taking this into the field of art, I like to think about it as a part inside you, free of social conditioning, education, and any expectations of this world we live in. And every now and then, it tells us about a craving it has, just like a child wanting a lollipop. Now, of course, children are not acting responsible and disciplined, but it's their innocence, playfulness, and carefreeness each and every one of us once had. Before you learned how to draw a face with hard training, rules, methods, schools, and teachers, I'm pretty sure as a kid you chose to paint with some colors without any thought behind it. And this is something heavily discussed in the art community, more so the modern art community. Now, this is where I stand. Your adult self has to have control over your actions and decisions, but you can sometimes actively choose to feed your inner child its desires, which is exactly what you see me doing right now. Every now and then, when I get sick of all the seriousness and grinding, I feel a slight fatigue. I get bored, uninspired. Now, by accepting this, I'm listening to some sort of instinct, and I want to make sure it's well fed in order for me to not get burned out or blocked. So what I do is, I think my most used art supply is a pencil. I love drawing in graphite, it feels the most natural to me. But every now and then I feel the urge to do something completely opposite and different. If I let my inner child speak, it would say, I'm sick of black and white, I want all the colors. And instead of pushing the thought away, thinking, stop it, this is ridiculous, we draw portraits with graphite, that's what we do, I started embracing those desires. How I tackle this is by combining my hard-learned skills of, in this case, constructing portraits from references with a total intuitive process of coloring. I set the borders for myself, those being, I still use the knowledge I learned to build up a proper head, but that's the only framework I give myself. Once I start picking up those colored pencils, or in this case, pastel pencils, I try to make carefree decisions. Like, for example, which color to use. Most of the time, I just go by what my gut tells me and I try to reduce my thoughts to which color should I pick next? Why not red? I try not to have a plan. In the beginning, I have literally no idea how this will look in the end. It's a surprise, and I'm cool with that. So my whole process of drawing these rainbow portraits is to combine my previously learned knowledge with an intuitive decision, and by the time I finish these drawings, I can imagine asking my inner child, "Are you happy now? You used all the colors you wanted to use," and I feel satisfied. This process will look different for each person, but why not try something crazy? And maybe you can even absolutely make it work. This is just my opinion, but I denied those deep wishes for a long time, and it gave me many art blocks and lots of frustration because I lost my playfulness, and it can be really beneficial to your creative process to do something unexpected. Surprise yourself and just have fun from time to time. Art can be tough, especially if you feel home in the fine art realism or semi-realism field. We have so many expectations of how things should turn out. Time to purposely ignore it and do something totally different. Your inner child will thank you. My last art lesson for this video will be patient with yourself. This is kind of self-explaining, but I still want to mention how important it is to be patient and also think in a bigger time frame. I know, somewhere out there is a 10-year-old kid painting like Sargent with no effort, so you think you have no time left to get better and finally become a real artist. This is ridiculous. Don't put that amount of pressure on you. Stop thinking this competitive. It will only bring you down. Instead, hey, good for you, Sargent kid. I wish you all the best with your art career, but our lives are totally different. There is no point in comparing yourself to other artists like that. As long as you outdo yourself every time, you will reach your goal eventually. Hey, I'm 31 right now, and I'm sure many of you watching are way younger and better, and I don't care. I made the most progress last year, and I'm so thankful to finally have a mostly healthy mindset with art, and I needed all those experiences to grow. My growth might be slower than others, but I'm happy as long as I see improvement and growth at all. It's time to set realistic goals with realistic time frames. Me, for example, I set my art goals yearly now instead of monthly. You always have to keep in mind you will fail from time to time. There is no discussion here. You will fail. Calculate this into the time frame you set for your goals. Time for failure, time for growth, because it won't come overnight, and time for studying. When I started drawing last year again, I had no idea I would improve on so many levels, like portrait drawings, figure drawing, coloring, but before I reached some personal milestones, I failed. Trust me, I failed. I failed hard with watercolors and gouache, had to redo a whole painting. I failed with this drawing here, had to redo the whole drawing. But you know what? I accepted it. It's okay to get frustrated, but then move on. Be patient with yourself and your growth, and forgive yourself for mistakes you do. Try to always expand your horizon and improve something with every drawing you do. Look back at your art and think about what you would do better next time. And then move on. And even if you move slow, that's way better than having a total block and just standing still. Be patient and you will be rewarded. And with that, I want to wrap up this video and my drawing, and I hope you found it useful or at least relatable. Let me know what art lesson helped you so that we can all share experience and learn from each other. I'm looking forward to seeing you in my next video.